when you frame the environmental solution in terms of the benefits that it actually provides people based on the things that they already want, and you show how the environmental solution meets them there and actually gets them what they want, they embrace it. They love it. It has to have that ability to solve people's pain, solve people's problems, deliver real tangible product benefits in addition to what it does for sustainability and cutting carbon and all the other things that I want to see happen too.
Welcome back to the AudioLife Podcast, where we tell your story in your voice. I'm your host today, Carrie Purcell, and today I'm joined by Josh Dorfman. Josh is a climate entrepreneur, an author, and a media personality. He is CEO and host of Super Cool, which we'll talk about more today. It's a media company covering real-world climate solutions that cut carbon, increase profits, and enhance modern life. Previously, Josh was co-founder and CEO of Planted, where he still acts as an advisor today. And it's an award-winning carbon-negative building materials manufacturer. He's also been a founder of 2 modern design sustainable furniture companies. He has served as CEO of Collider, the nation's first innovation center for climate resilience and adaptation. But you may have known him previously by his old, I'll call it his name, what he used to be called, the Lazy Environmentalist. So the Lazy Environmentalist was his brand. It was something he turned into a media brand with an award-winning television series, a daily radio show, and 2 popular books. So you might recognize his voice. You might recognize his name or his face. He's been featured all over the place. And interestingly, he also holds the title of being the only guest to ever ride a bicycle onto the Martha Stewart Show. So Josh is consistently making climate solutions relatable and actionable. And I'm excited to just chat with him today to learn more about his origin story and really what drives him. Josh, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for that wonderful intro. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. Obviously, there's a ton we could talk about. There's a lot that you've done. We're going to try to take it back to how it all came about and just share a little bit more about your journey.
Great. Let's do it.
Awesome. First, where are you joining us from today?
I am in Surfside Beach, South Carolina. It is a wonderful little town. Lots of trees, like this 2-mile grid that runs straight to the ocean, straight to the beach. It's undiscovered, but we just got a Trader Joe's, so I think we might be a little more discovered soon.
Yeah. People are coming now. So I often start us, people have a bit of a sense of who you are. They may have followed your journey for the last number of decades. I like to throw us way back. I often start with the first question, which I am going to do today. So can you start by telling us where you were born? And is there a story behind your name?
I was born in Yonkers in New York. Is there a story behind my name? Well, I mean, Joshua won the Battle of Jericho, but I don't know that I was, other than I think my parents deciding I was going to have a good Old Testament biblical name. I don't know that there's much significance. Yeah. I mean, that is significant, right? But yeah.
Totally. Any stories about your last name, your family name, or, family travels?
The story that comes to mind about my last name is when I was in my mid-20s and in business school getting my MBA, I went to a school called Thunderbird. It's the School of Global Management. And I was dating at the time a girl from Germany. And I went and visited her, met her family, and I was out to dinner with multiple generations. So my girlfriend, her parents, her grandparents, everyone coming to meet me. It was really fun. And I'm sitting there next to her grandma. And the whole time at dinner, she didn't speak English. She's like, Dorfman? And I'm like, close. Yeah, Dorfman. She's like, Dorfman? I'm like, yeah, Dorfman, whatever. So anyway, after dinner, my girlfriend was like, you know that Dorfman means village idiot, right? And I'm like, oh, well.
That's a pretty good story.
That's the story of my last name.
All right. Well, thank you.
Dorfman, I think means like village man or whatever, but Dorfman, yeah, slightly different. Yeah, it's all in the air. All in the air.
Okay. Okay, so somewhere between being born in Yonkers and doing your MBA, let's talk just a little bit about what growing up was like. So maybe a little bit about family life. Yeah, we'll start there.
So I grew up in a suburb of New York City in Westchester County called Armonk. It was a fantastic place to grow up. At first, really more of like a middle class kind of suburb, and then progressively, I think, got more affluent over time, middle than upper middle class. My parents, both entrepreneurs, for most of my childhood, ran a children's sleepaway camp. The sleepaway camp is in New Hampshire, but that is still a year-round business that they worked on, actually mostly out of our home. So I grew up around entrepreneurs. Other than that, the Armonk was like growing up in the woods. We were outside, and it was one of those places where you could just be outside, and my mom would be like, don't come back till dinner, like you and your brother go play or whatever. And that was also fantastic. I didn't know enough to know how special it was because it was just normal. But when I would bring friends home from college later on, and they would say like, dude, you grew up in the woods, and I'd be like, oh yeah, look at that. I guess I did. So that was a big part of my childhood. Played a lot of sports, was ultimately a 3-sport captain in high school: football, basketball, lacrosse. So that was always a very, very big part of my upbringing.
Nice.
And identity, certainly as a kid.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned a brother. Is it any other siblings? One brother?
One younger brother, yeah.
Younger brother. Okay, so you're the oldest. Parents were entrepreneurs. Did you get to experience the sleepaway camp? Were you put to work? What was that dynamic?
Well, it was really interesting, actually. So I should say a little more. So my 2 great uncles originally started this camp. It's called Camp Wall Whitman. It's in New Hampshire. Co-ed camp, sleepaway camp. Yeah, so I actually went I think I was 9 years old when I went for the first summer. Which was a year or two actually before my parents took it over from my great uncles. And it was just a magical place in the White Mountains. The Appalachian Trail actually goes through camp. So you would have backpackers going through camp, and it's on a lake, a mountain, like really, really special spot. So I was there, yes, prior to my parents taking it over and turning it into their business. And then as a camper while they were running it. And then I was a CIT. So a counselor in training. And that's when I was 16. And that's when I got caught drinking with some of the other CITs and had to go to my dad's house to get punished, and decided I was not going to work for them ever again.
Okay. If you've been caught and punished by somebody who wasn't your parents, what do you think? How would that have changed your reaction?
That is a good question. I liked camp. I liked it a lot. I made great friends. But there was more I knew even at that age, 16 years old for sure. After that I wanted to go do and experience than necessarily be, let's say, a camp counselor or spend all my summers, and my brother actually ended up taking over the camp, and he runs it now with his wife. So, just different personalities, different views on life. But it's still for a very long time has been really such a big part of me, obviously such a big part of our family, and our identity and our values are wrapped up in that really wonderful place.
Yeah. I mean, you've had a climate focus for, I don't know if it's fair to say before it was popular and trendy, for a long time. So I think it is really interesting for us to sort of hear where you came from and how that became the focus for you. And we may not be there yet, but just getting some of those influences.
Yeah, I guess I would say very little about how I was raised. Maybe growing up in the woods is something that I would say is, and then being at camp, and camp was, being in nature. But the thing is, I liked being around nature. I didn't actually really like being in nature. Camp, the boys and girls every age you have to hike once a week. I hated that. I didn't want to go on a hike. Just wanted to play sports, I liked being there. It was pretty, but I didn't want to go out and climb a mountain. And then the best summer I ever had, it was bunk 4. I was 10 years old, and it rained every Tuesday magically, which was hike day. And it was the best. It was just the absolute best. And so I, appreciate nature. I like being in nature, so I would say there's that strong connection on a certain level. And then I would say the other thing that was important to my mom, and a big part of our interaction as a family, was it was very important to her that we always had family dinner, no matter what was happening. And as parents and entrepreneurs who were also running a summer camp, they were also going out to meet families and try and recruit new campers.
Sure.
That was usually in the evenings, right? Because you'd go when parents were home and they would go talk about the camp. But it was always prioritized that we would have dinner first as a family, and then they would go. It was just always a part of my childhood. And even at a young age, there was an expectation that we were going to talk about current events, that we would talk globally about what was happening in the world. We didn't talk about the environment. We didn't talk about climate change, but we were cultivated to have a kind of more sort of global awareness and mindset, to be reflective and thinking about what's happening in the world. And those things ultimately, I think, laid some groundwork, or, probably some patterns of the way I thought about things for later on when I was exposed to data experiences that got me thinking about climate.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. We will get there. Do you still feel the same way about hiking today?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I still love being in nature. I still, I love it. Although I do like going on. Gosh, if I'm really honest, I have to admit, just like going up a mountain just to come back down still doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. And I do things that don't make a ton of sense. Like I've run marathons. I've done things that are like, they're totally illogical. Like, why would you possibly, go, put yourself in that much pain? But yeah. So I generally feel the same.
Okay. No judgment. Hiking is something that grew on me. I was in your camp where I was like, I don't understand. Like I was the kind of, like, I raced, right? I was like, let's get to the thing I'm supposed to see. Is it worth it? And then let's finish this. And now I've reached a stage where that walk in the woods actually makes sense to me. So just checking.
I love the walk in the woods. I love the walk in the woods. Yeah. So,
all right. It's just the mount. It's more the mountains.
It's just the elevation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like mountains. I just don't want to walk up them,
Yeah. I mean, there's some wisdom there, I would say. Okay. So you were athletic, you enjoyed sports, you excelled in sports, it sounds like. Talk to me a little bit about what role that played in your life, and why did you have to get to the point of being the captain? Why did you have to do the full marathon? Tell me a little bit about athleticism and sport.
Yeah. I mean, I just always, from a very young age, just really enjoyed sports. So it was always fun for me. There was always a ball around. I grew up in a Jewish family, and I say that because culturally, Jewish boys, like where I was growing up, didn't play contact sports. Like that was just at a time and a place where like you were not actually going to be playing football. My parents would be like, do you see a lot of Dorfmans in the NFL? No. Like, do you see a lot of Dorfmans on Wall Street? Probably, right? Like think about like what your future's gonna be. But to me, so that meant I played soccer and tennis and and sports that like nice Jewish boys play growing up, and I felt like I didn't want that identity and those restrictions imposed on me. That was important to me. And the kids that I looked up to in middle school, and really in elementary school, middle school, and high school, the kids in my town, honestly, it felt soft to me to just be the sort of tennis, soccer type kid. I was going to play football. And so it was like this ongoing battle with my parents when all through middle school. And I was like, when I get to high school, I'm playing football. Like in 8th grade, I'm like, I'm playing football next year. And no, you're not. I'm like, I am playing, and we would go back and forth. And so my parents relented. So 9th grade, I did play freshman football, but the deal I made with my mom is, like, I don't know if you've ever seen, like, if you watch an NFL football game and you see like the big defensive players or the linebackers, like the biggest guys, they often have this thing, it's called a neck roll, that they wear this like extra padding around their neck because they're getting hit all the time. You never see a skill player like a wide receiver or someone with a neck roll because it's just ridiculous. But I was a wide receiver, and the deal I made with my mom was like I had to wear a neck roll. So I like came out with like this like beefy thing like first day, and everyone's like, Dorfman, what is wrong with you, dude? Aren't you like a wide receiver? I'm like, don't ask, man. It's just like the only way it's the only way I'm allowed to be out here. And one of the biggest life lessons for me, I think, from my dad happened that freshman year playing football, because I got knocked down a lot very fast, and like it was hard, right? Like it's like and it was extremely physical, and it was I was in pain and sore, and the coaches were like really tough, and after 3 or 4 days, I remember coming home and being like, all right, guys, you were right, like mom, dad, like I don't need to play, like I'm gonna I'm ready to retire. And I remember my dad saying like, well, sorry, son, you can't. You have to play the season because you committed. Now you're going to finish the season. If you don't want to play next year, you don't have to play ever again, but you will finish the season, right? And it was so powerful to me because I knew he didn't want me to play. But the lesson that he was teaching me clearly never left. I mean, it was such a valuable life lesson of when you commit to something and you follow through and you finish what you say you're going to do. So all of that was part of my childhood. And then, it wasn't like your question, why did you go all the way? Why did you be the captain? I didn't know that I was the captain. I didn't know that I was cut out to be the captain. But because I wasn't the most vocal, I wasn't the great, the most, in that sense, the most charismatic of the kids on the team. And some of the kids were these kids I looked up to who were. But honestly, I remember, my senior year, it feels a little weird to talk about, but I remember my senior year when my teammates, my friends, my peers voted me a captain, one of three, with these two other guys who I also looked up to, even though my same age, who were the lifelong football players. And I kind of started ninth grade. So I became captain with them and I was the quarterback. But them voting me captain was probably the most meaningful honor I've ever received. It just meant so much to me for this thing that was so important to me. And we were really good. We were really, really, really good. So it was a great experience.
Very cool. Fun. So before we move forward, we're gonna kind of look at education. We're gonna jump into your career. I'm just going to ask you a couple other things that came up in our conversation already. So you mentioned kind of the counselor in training, 16 years old, get caught drinking. Yeah. Sorry. So is that just I've been a 16-year-old? Was that rebellion, or was that just that's just what we're doing and I got caught?
Yeah, for me at that age, I was not particularly rebellious. So it was just kind of a thing that happened. And I can remember we were, trying to get these, some of the female counselors, all summer was a running joke. Oh, bring us beers, whatever. And somehow we wore them down and they made a really bad decision and did. And we just got caught. I wasn't a particularly rebellious kid. That wasn't part of my makeup. So yeah, it was just sort of a lark and which made it even all the more worse to actually have to go up to my parents' house to get in trouble.
Did they take you as a group, or were you did they take you individually as their son and their?
Oh, well, it was worse than that. They took us, I remember there were 8 of us, these kids that I'd gone to camp with forever who now were the counselors in training, and we're not quite counselors, we're not campers, and we'd gotten caught. So we all went up to my parents' house, and I remember my dad could be very stern. He was actually a headmaster before he became a camp director. So he's a funny guy. He's a wonderful guy, but he has this headmaster streak in him.
Yeah.
So he can be pretty scary. And so he's doing his whole scary thing. And I remember my friend John was Bill, my dad's name. He's Bill, I don't actually think we should all get in trouble here because not all of us were drinking. And my dad was yes, that's true. And he was looking right at me and he was if you weren't drinking, leave now. Right. And I was and I remember my friend Peter was don't you get up. Do not get up. Do not. So, yeah.
I like that. It's very tempting to walk out. Got it. Okay. Let's pause on education. We talked about the sports aspect of it. What was education like for you? Did you enjoy school? Did you take it seriously?
I'm good at academics. I was a smart kid. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I had a teacher my freshman year in high school who taught English, who I knew was going to be great because everyone said he was great. This guy, Bud Pollock, and he was great. And he started to instill in me, just started as a freshman to instill kind of the enjoyment of reading and literature. And then my junior year, he taught an honors course, which I was able to take. And then that course lit me up. And I was an okay student. I was a good above average student, but I wasn't a star. But I remember over winter break, my junior year, I don't think I had an A average, and I wanted to be able to get to an A average because the college coach from Harvard had had called up my athletic director my junior year during football season and had said, if Josh gets X on his SATs and his grades are really good, we want him. And so then I was oh, okay, I probably should be studying more because yeah, that sounds great. I'll go to Harvard. Great. right? Play football at Harvard. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And one of my kind of high school idols, this guy, Don Rogers, who'd gone through my high school, had gone to a couple of years ahead of me, had done that, gone to Harvard, was playing football and lacrosse. But I wasn't a great student. So I was trying pretty hard. And so I remember Mr. Pollock said to the class, look, if anybody wants extra credit over the winter, come see me and I'll give you a book and you can read it for extra credit. So I was the only one who went to go see him. I was like, yeah, I'll read something. He gave me For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. And I just loved it. And it was like this whole experience of reading and literature and Hemingway and just the kind of the romance of it and the bravado of it and the larger than life themes in that book. And I absolutely loved it. And so when I came back and he's like, okay, here's a little quiz. And I just was like 5 minutes later, I'm like, here you go. He's like, oh, you actually read this thing. Like, it changed my relationship with him and it changed my relationship to literature. And that was by far the best experience I had, kind of certainly through high school. I didn't get into Harvard. That really irritated me after the guy came and was, the coach was like, you're getting in. And I applied early and got waitlisted and boohoo, right? Like, oh, poor Josh, you didn't get into Harvard. But I did go to Penn. So I got into Penn and I went to Penn. I walked onto the football team there. But I wasn't a great student in college either. Like, it really wasn't, how can I say this? I learned more after college, in the couple of years after college, where I was reading all the time on my own, choosing to actually learn more than I ever really did in an academic setting.
With going to college, was it about football for you? Is that what you were planning to focus on? Or did you have a sense of like, this will be my future career and this is what I'll study?
I was raised by camp directors, I was raised by camp directors who were like, my dad had a master's from Harvard. He has PhD in education from Columbia. My mom had her PhD, her master's in international affairs from Columbia. I mean, they were very, very, very bright. My mom was kind of intellectual. My dad, is not particularly intellectual, but very academic. At the same time, all that's to say, academics mattered. But what I was going to study, it was really very like liberal arts. Like, they're like, oh, whatever, go choose your own adventure. So I didn't really have that much direction. I knew my mom, I don't know that I would really say she gave up a career in State Department and diplomacy to marry my dad, but she had, as an undergrad, or maybe even I'm not sure, as a grad student, she was doing an internship with the State Department in Paris and had a certain, I think, view of what her life might be, but she chose to get married and have a family, and for that in the 1970s. And so I think that was always a big influence on me. So I knew I was going to study international affairs and had vague senses of, maybe a career in diplomacy, maybe CIA. I didn't really know, but I went with that sort of point of view. And in truth, I wasn't a great student. I didn't declare a major by my junior year. I had to go see an advisor and they were like, well, if you want to graduate on time, you're an international affairs major. And I was like, or international relations. I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds right. So they're like, okay, these are the classes you have to take, from here to graduation to leave this place on time. So, yeah.
Okay. You had that entrepreneurial kind of influence of your parents, at least the example. Were you thinking about entrepreneurship at that time for yourself?
Was I thinking about entrepreneurship? I was thinking about, well, let's see, my junior year, my junior year spring semester, I went and studied in France. I studied in Lyon. And I was thinking, no, I wouldn't say I was thinking about entrepreneurship. I was thinking about, how do I get overseas? How do I go have cool experiences? I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I actually got a job after that semester was over, working in Nice in a youth hostel and just goofing around Nice for a little bit. That was fantastic for about 6 weeks. And then I was like, I need to leave here because I'm probably going to die if I stay. We're just having too much fun. I need to go. And so I actually went to Israel for the remainder of the summer. And I say all this to say, I was working for at least for a little bit. Are you familiar with the concept of a kibbutz in Israel? When Jews started moving to Israel, before Israel became formally a state in 1948, even the first way that like settlements were organized, and they were called was in the form of what was called a kibbutz, was just really more like a kind of like a socialist venture commune where everyone would farm, you share in the fruits of the labor. But there could be industry, there might be factories, but it was really a sense of like more of like a socialist place where people were looking after each other. And then as the kind of 20th century went on, and probably still to today, they're still a big part of society, less so today, just as the country's developed more. But you could, in the 1990s, go volunteer and live on a kibbutz and work on the kibbutz, get some experience of the country, make a few shekels, not that many, work 6 days a week, too long, but, be in the country and have a job. And so I felt, kind of knowing my family, that was, I say knowing my family, like Israel, Judaism was a big part of our family identity. My grandparents were big proponents of Israel. My great uncle, who had started the summer camp I mentioned, had taught a number of the folks. He was a professor at Harvard. He had actually taught like Bibi Netanyahu and some of the other like eventual Israeli leaders like back in the day. So it was a big part of our families. It was important. But I, as maybe coming through, had conflicting feelings about how I felt toward my own religion. But I felt like, you know what? Here's the moment. I'm going to Israel. I'm going to like work on this kibbutz. I'm going to work in the fields. I'm going to till the soil. I'm going to get back to my roots. I'm going to see what this means to me, try and discover a sense of Judaism. And so I worked it out so I actually could I got to this kibbutz about 45 minutes north of Tel Aviv. I flew there and met the woman who assigned volunteers their jobs. And she said, so what do you want to do? And I gave her my spiel, like, I want to till the soil and blah, blah, blah. And she's like rolling her eyes. And she's like, yeah, we don't have any of those jobs. I'm like, well, what do you have? She's like, well, some people work with the cows, some people work in the kitchen, and, we have a factory and volunteers. No one really wants to work there. I'm like, okay, well then whatever I guess, I don't know, whatever you got. Like, I guess. So she's like, okay, showed me to my quarters. She came back a few minutes later. She's like, okay, you're in the factory. I'm like, okay, so be up at the crossroads at 6 tomorrow morning. You go to the factory. So I get up to the crossroads the next morning at 6 a.m. It's like me and a bunch of people. We get on this bus and we go to the factory. We get to the factory. It turns out it's an orange juice packaging factory. So we're packaging in different types of cartons and containers and what have you. And the foreman speaks English. And here I am, this like, self-important American who like probably thinks everything should cater to him. And he's talking to me in Hebrew, and I'm like, I don't speak Hebrew. And he assigns everyone else their jobs, and off they go. And he's like raising his voice, and we have a lot of Israeli friends, right? But he's like raising his voice, and I'm like, I don't speak Hebrew, man. So he hands me a broom, and I like sweep, and like that was. But then I'm like, really? I've come to Israel to sweep, and so this goes on for a few days. I get these like, what I feel like are these ridiculously bad jobs, and every morning I'm like, I don't speak Hebrew, and it turns out these guys who I'm in the factory with, they're all from Russia, and they've emigrated to Israel. They're professionals. They're lawyers, doctors, accountants, waiting to be placed into Israeli society, and they're learning Hebrew. They're on the kibbutz. They're the ones working in the factory. So one morning, we're all having breakfast, me and the Russians, and I became friendly with a couple of them, who spoke good English, and they're laughing, and I'm like, Vladimir, what are you laughing about? They're like, oh, we're laughing at you. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, we're laughing because you always get the worst jobs. I'm like, I do get the worst jobs, don't I? No, that's what it feels like. I always get the worst jobs. I'm like, I can't figure it out. And he's like, well, the foreman thinks you're Russian, and he thinks you speak Hebrew. You're playing with him. And I'm like, why would I do that? And they're like, that's what we don't know. They all start laughing. I'm like, well, that's not what I'm doing. So I go to the head of the kibbutz, and I'm like, we've got a serious problem here, and he's like, oh God. Right. So he like gets the foreman, we're sitting with the head of the kibbutz in his office, and, and I'm explaining how I get the worst jobs. And this guy who runs like 1,500 families is like, oh my God, deal with this American. So speaks with the foreman in Hebrew. They work something out. My jobs get a little bit better. So to cut to the chase, a couple of weeks later, I'm on the orange juice assembly line where these packages are coming down, and we're just supposed to put them like these cartons, stack them, and then they go off to whatever store or whatever. And it's the Russians are sort of spread out, and we're the only ones in this like ridiculous assembly line that, certainly looks like it was built, not the most modern type facility, I guess I would say. And it's so monotonous and it's so boring. And I've been doing this day after day after day that I'm daydreaming when I come to. Vladimir's gone. All the Russians are gone. The whole thing is empty. And where Vladimir is supposed to be stacking cartons right next to me or right across from me, all the orange juice is spilling on the floor, spilling out on the factory floor, and no one else is there. And then I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? And then I see Vladimir, and he's out on the loading dock smoking cigarettes, and I'm yelling to him like, Vladimir. And he's like, oh, come here, and I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever, screw this place. So I go out and I'm we're sitting there, we're smoking cigarettes, and then the Israeli foremen come around the corner, and they see this giant mess. They come looking for us, and they see us out on the loading dock hanging out. So we're sitting there smoking cigarettes. I don't speak Hebrew, and like Vladimir's talking with them. Anyway, so what Vladimir told the Israelis was that I had encouraged everyone to strike. So like that I had fomented this labor rebellion. So anyway, I was like taken back to the head of the kibbutz. So I got kicked off the kibbutz. That's the long story. Like that was I got kicked off a socialist kibbutz for starting a labor rebellion. So I didn't, I came home from Israel still feeling a little bit mixed about my relationship with,
Well, I was 100% going to come back and ask you what your relationship with Judaism was after that.
Steady state, man. Still, feeling a little conflicted to this day.
All right. Thank you for sharing that.
And now for a word from our sponsors. Ready to share your stories and life philosophy? Or capture those of a parent or grandparent? Or maybe a corporate package is right for you to build connection across your workforce and add value to your clients. Visit audiolife.io today to learn more. Our listeners will get 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. AudioLife, where memories find their voice.
You mentioned your MBA. I don't know if you did that right after, if there was a period of time in between.
Yeah. So I developed a 3-year plan for coming out of college. I actually had an idea of what I wanted to do. And what I decided I was going to do was I decided I was going to use my education to go be a ski bum in Vail for a year. And then I was going to go from Vail to China for 2 years. And then I was going to go into the CIA. So, this was this was my 3-year plan. And that's basically, I didn't actually go into the CIA, although I did get a recruitment letter that my mom threw in the trash, but they probably send this to a lot of people. But I was a ski bum in Vail, which was pretty great. I had a bunch of jobs. I set it up by the winter where I was waiting tables in Vail Village on the weekends. I was working in an art gallery 4 nights a week. And then I basically paid my rent by having a job on Friday nights where I worked co-check in a disco. That's a pretty tough job to get, in Vail Village. At least it was back in the day. I skied all the time. It was awesome. And so then I went from Vail to Nanjing, China, where I did actually feel my senior year. I did write I wrote my senior thesis on China. I got very interested in China from an international affairs point of view. And for some reason, so this was 1993, the Tiananmen Square incident, where there had been democratic protesters in Beijing, which had been violently quashed and put down by the Chinese government and had made relationships extremely frosty with the West. That was thawing as the Clinton administration came in. And for some reason, it became really clear to me that in the 21st century, the most important relationship in the world would be the relationship between China and America. For whatever reason, was clear in 1993 to me that was going to happen. And so I knew I was going to go to China because I was thinking, and I say CIA, I thought CIA maybe, like I said, Foreign Service, State Department, but I was thinking I want to play a role in this relationship that I think is going to be very important for the future of the planet and the future of peace, prosperity, you name it. So I went to China and that was probably the most profound experience I had was my time there.
Yeah. You had set out 2 years. You stuck to the 2 years?
Just about. So I got a job teaching English on the Nanjing University of Science and Technology, which was just a great place to land because I was teaching graduate students. So students my age, older, and I had a class of PhD students, which was also really fascinating because their age spanned decades. And the reason why was because we read about things in America like, the Cultural Revolution in the 1970s when Chairman Mao sent intellectuals out into the countryside, right? And all this crazy stuff. Well, these were either the intellectuals or the children of the intellectuals whose lives had been disrupted for years and were now were kind of back in an academic setting. That's who I was teaching. And I didn't talk about that very overtly because you knew that there were lines things you couldn't talk about certainly things in, relating to the history of China in that way, things relating to democracy and democratization, not because it would put me in danger. The only thing that would happen to me is they'd kick me out of the country, but it would put whoever you were talking to at risk, right? Because there was always a presence of the Communist Party. In every class, there was what was called a monitor, who was a Communist Party member, and usually very pleasant, usually the best spoken, had the best English, very articulate, really, but like recruited, and so it was always present. But the thing that happened that really changed the course of my life was that I got a part-time job working in a factory that made bicycle locks. And at the time, in 1995, 96, 1 billion people in China all rode bicycles, right? There were like hardly anyone had the wealth to own a car. Of course, there were some cars and taxis, but everyone had a bike. So I got a job working in a bicycle lock factory for a company called Kryptonite, an American company.
Good locks.
Yeah, good locks, right? So Kryptonite opened a factory in Nanjing, and the guy who had come in to be the CEO of Kryptonite sent his kids to my family's summer camp. And this great guy, this guy Gary, and so he was talking to my dad, and he was saying, "Hey, Josh, what's Josh up to?" So I've painted you a picture of my father, and my father's like, "I've no idea, he's supposed to be in law school, he's going to China, and he's like," and it's, as it turned out, right, like I'm 20 minutes from where now Gary's the CEO of Kryptonite. They're opening their first factory. So I got this job working quality control ostensibly in this factory. And for me, I just wanted to learn every aspect of the country that I could. I wanted to soak it all up. So I was on an academic setting. I thought, oh, awesome, I'll be in a business setting, I'll be in a factory setting. I just want to understand the culture. I want to be a sponge. And was just so open to that type of experience. And so, the first day I showed up at the factory, I probably brought a case of Marlboro cigarettes with me because that was currency at the time. Like, you couldn't get Marlboros, right? Those were like, that's what all the Chinese wanted to smoke. Everybody smoked. So I'm handing out the Marlboro cigarettes to all these engineers. I don't really speak Chinese yet, and we're just trying to communicate. And we go out on the factory floor, and the job is really very simple because Kryptonite locks are really pretty straightforward. There's a U-shaped part, there's a bar, and there's a key, right? So the president had come over. He's like, "Josh, this is your job. Grab a U out of one bin, a bar out of the other, and a key. Make sure they fit, make sure it turns, make sure the logo's facing the right way. That's it." So I go out with these like 15 engineers. There's like probably hundreds of people working on this factory floor. I grab a U, I grab a bar, and I go to put them together. And they've made like, I don't know how many thousands of these U's too wide. So none of them fit in, like, they just like, they messed it up, right? And I'm like, what do I do? So I'm trying to like fit this thing together. And the concept of like face or losing face in China, like I'm like, oh God, everyone's about to lose a lot of face here. The head engineer comes over, he rips this lock out of my hand. And he takes this U-shaped part and he's trying to like squeeze it between his legs and do anything he can to like try to fit it together. And then he takes the U and he starts smashing it on the table, like trying to bend it, right? And he's like bending this thing. And finally he like mangles the whole thing, but manages to like fit it together and turn the key. The logo's gone because it's now, and he like hands this thing back to me. I've only been in the country for like 3 weeks, and he like hands this thing back to me and he puts his thumbs up and he's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure nothing about this is okay, dude, but I don't know how to say hold the line or like, and I'm like, okay, all right, So anyway, I ended up working for Kryptonite for about 1.5 years full time. So I will just say this, and then I'll put a pin in it. The experience was unbelievable on so many levels, but it did eventually lead to my realization or I would say my epiphany in some sense about climate change and global warming. We opened a third factory in southern China in 1997, I want to say. And I was traveling with the owner of the factory who we were partnering with, the Chinese, the Chinese entrepreneur. We got to this restaurant where we were going to consummate the deal, the two sides, the American side and the Chinese side. And before we went into the restaurant, so I'd been in the country probably for about 1.5 years at this point. He turned to me and he said, "Josh, look, my Mercedes is the biggest Mercedes of all the Mercedes in this parking lot." Now, this was southern China. It was still communist China, but a lot of Hong Kong southern money was flowing into the country and certainly into manufacturing. So this guy was doing well, and his chest was swelled up. And, and I thought, you're just like us. You want more, bigger. We are, like, this was actually when globalization was considered a good thing, and we're exporting the American dream, and we're saying to the world, be like us, right? Have more, like raise your quality of life. And then I thought, geez, I've been here for a year and a half. What have I seen? I've seen highways, tunnels, bridges being built so fast. All of this automobile infrastructure. Nobody wants a bicycle. Here I am, like, I'm trying to sell bike locks. I'm like nobody wants them. And the future is going to be 1 billion cars. And that's when I thought, I don't know anything about global warming. I don't know anything about climate change, but just even from a natural resources, how are we going to enable 1 billion more cars in China and then Russia and then India and then Eastern Europe as everyone raises their quality of life and standard of living? How does that happen given finite natural resources? So I felt like it was a gift in a sense where I could see the future. Ultimately, that led me down the path to become a climate entrepreneur.
Amazing. Okay. So if I skip forward, and you can tell me, if we're missing important pieces here. So if I skip forward to the Lazy Environmentalist, I'm curious why the lazy part, and how did it come about?
I started a company in 2004 with the idea. So I came home from China in 1997. I got my MBA, went through a bunch of different work experiences, but I never could lose this feeling that I was describing to you. Like, I've seen the future. I know that we're going to have this climate issue, right? I didn't really know what to do with that, and I wrestled with it, and it finally crystallized for me in 2004, where I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a company that sells really well-designed, really cool, green products, eco-friendly products made from recycled materials, reclaimed materials, stuff that has a lower impact. And if I can make it cool and really well designed, then I don't have to try to convince consumers to even shop their environmental values. Whether if they have them or don't, I'm just going to give them what they want anyway, which is like really well designed stuff, right? That was my concept. So I started this company called Vivavi, like Viva V, live life. And this evolved into this modern design, sustainable furnishings and furniture company. I had started in DC, so we'll get to how I got to the Lazy Environmentalist. And I started in DC because at the final spot I went into to try and figure out my worldview about sustainability and climate was I'd gone into a PhD program at George Washington University to focus on China and politics and the environment. After a semester, I was like, no way, my brain doesn't work this way. This was a big mistake. I'm going to go, actually, I know what I need to do. What I need to do is focus on consumerism, because 2/3 of our economy in America is based on consumerism, what we shop, what we buy. If I can influence that in a more sustainable direction, I can have impact. Start this company in Washington, D.C. After about 8 or 9 months, I realized that many of the best designers who I'm starting to work with and who I want to go work with are in Brooklyn. So I decided to move the company up to New York. On the last day I was in Washington, D.C., I made a deal with the young woman who was my office manager, this young woman, Lucy, that if she would help pack up the van that we would take to trade shows and drive all my stuff with me up to some apartment I've never been to in Brooklyn, I would give her the van as a parting gift. And, she wasn't moving with the company up to Brooklyn. So she agreed. And so she helps me pack it up. It's about 10:30 at night. We're on the New Jersey Turnpike driving up to Brooklyn. And I can tell something's wrong with Lucy. Like, she's having like this panic attack. I don't know but she's in the passenger seat and she's like, can barely breathe. I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? And she's like, Josh, look, I have to ask you something. I have to get this off my chest. I couldn't ask when you were my boss, but you're not my boss anymore. And I just really need to talk to you about something. And so I thought, oh my God, she's attracted to me. She's right. Like, I'm not her boss. Like, this is pretty crazy. Like, how's this night going to go? I haven't been to this apartment. What are the logistics? Like, I get nervous. And so I was like, look, it's okay. Let's talk about it. You can tell me anything. Anything. It's okay. So finally she's like, all right, look, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but are you really an environmentalist? She's like, you're selling this stuff, but like, you're always in the shower. You barely recycle. You were going to throw your bed out. I took it to the homeless shelter. Like, you don't act like an environmentalist. You're a giant hypocrite. Like, I've been working for you for a year and a half. Like, what is your deal, man? So there's, not attracted to me at all, just angry. Slept on the couch, took the van. I never saw her again, although we have communicated since. But I was kind of left with like this like realization of like, she's totally right. Like, how does that make any sense? Like, that's totally true. I'm actually like this terrible environmentalist, but here I am trying to convince everyone to buy all this green stuff. And so I wrote a blog entry on our little furniture site, and I called it the Lazy Environmentalist. I was like, I'm just going to own this. I'm just going to be transparent. Like, I take long showers. I do my best thinking in the shower. I know I'm using a lot of water, a lot of heat to heat that water, a lot of energy. I'm not going to take a shorter shower just because I'm aware of my impact. What I need is an incredible low flow shower head with awesome pressure. And I want an Audi TT convertible. Like, I don't care if it's electric or biodiesel or hydrogen or whatever. Like, if I can afford it and it's what I want and it's also green, I'll make that choice. But I want the Audi TT convertible, right? So like, I need you, industry, to work with me, like this giant hypocrite, to make it easy for me to live by my environmental values because I care, but I'm lazy. I need convenience. I'm a lazy environmentalist. So I wrote this little blog at the beginning of 2005, and an internet radio producer called me up not long after that, actually. And he was like, I read your blog. I'm like, how? He's like, that's really interesting. Let's turn this into an internet radio show. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do that. I have no marketing budget. He's like, well, you'll pay for it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess let's try it. So we called it the Lazy Environmentalist, and I started interviewing and bringing on my designers, other people doing what I thought was cool stuff, tested it. I was in New York. I got an intro to Sirius Satellite Radio at the time, tested it. They liked it. They picked it up as a weekly show in 2006. And then it just had a really good run from there.
Very cool. That is quite the story. I have questions. We're going to get into like life philosophy questions at some point soon. But take me through what happened to the furniture show, the furniture company, what happened to the show. Like, take me through kind of the next steps and how that evolved.
Well, so I was doing this weekly radio show, not really thinking too much about it. I mean, I felt like it had some momentum and it was cool, but I wasn't really, actually, I shouldn't say that. When I was doing the internet show, I wasn't thinking too much about it. But in 2006, when it went to Sirius, I realized like, oh, this is a brand. This is actually an interesting conversation. I should write a book. And so I put a book proposal together and got an agent, and it was really good timing. Al Gore's movie Inconvenient Truth had just come out. And so there was this burgeoning cultural awareness that we need to be thinking about this more. So the timing was really good to sell that book. So that kind of had some momentum going into 2007, where the show went live every day on Sirius. So now I had this kind of daily, but it was still a small show. I mean, it was on a very high channel, on Sirius. I don't think it was Sirius XM yet, but still it's cool. Like I had this national radio show. With the furniture, this was still my passion. And I really became so passionate about this idea of marrying incredible design, contemporary modern design with sustainability, more responsible materials, more responsible manufacturing practices. I just love that. I love the idea of being able to live your values in the kind of most elevated, aesthetically pleasing way possible. I still love that idea. And so I was bootstrapping my furniture company. I didn't have enough cash to have an apartment and a New York City showroom, which is extremely expensive. So I decided, when my roommate moved out, I was living in Greenpoint in Brooklyn, this kind of transitioning neighborhood just on the edge of Williamsburg, kind of hipster-y, still Polish, so rent wasn't crazy, and I had this really big apartment. I decided that I was going to turn my apartment into my furniture showroom. So I emailed all of these like really amazing designers all over the country, and I was like, guys, great news. We're opening a New York City showroom. I'm going to need you to consign me a bed and a sofa and a dining table. So I furnished my apartment, and then I lived in my furniture store for 4 years.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then, I had a salesperson. We had a pretty small team, but so I'd wake up, I'd open the doors, our salesperson would come over. I'd go into I'd take the subway into the city, go record the radio show, come back, be working on the business. I mean, it was really fun. I mean, it was such a vibrant, time in my life. And I can, and then I'd come back and there'd be like shoppers in my apartment, looking at furniture, and in my bedroom. And sometimes you'd hear someone being like, whispering like, I think someone lives here. It'd be like, then you'd look and you'd be like, I'd be like, uh-oh. And I'd like peek in the bedroom and there'd be like a sock in the corner, or my salesman would be like, Josh, I love working for you. I love the mission, but like, you got to make your bed, like just basic things, So, yeah.
So that was definitely my next question. What was the cleaning regime? Who helped you
Not enough.
get it
Not
out?
enough. Not enough.
Not
It
enough.
was probably should have been more, I guess I should say. That business had some, pretty decent traction. It was definitely early days for that kind of business to try and get it off the ground. We had some good ideas. I opened a second furniture showroom in 2008. When was it? 2007? Maybe 2008, right before the financial crisis. And that really impacted our company. We got the space for free because we agreed to furnish it with our furniture in this building called the River House, which was one of the new modern, like LEED green apartment buildings, condos going up in Battery Park City in Lower Manhattan. Leonardo DiCaprio brought his condo in there, which I say because actually he came into our showroom and some of these people would come into our showroom and we had to show him for free. And so then I was like, oh, this is a great concept because I know these buildings are rolling out all over the country. We'll go get free showrooms because we'll furnish them with a captive audience. Like people buying in these buildings are actually this really elusive customer who we're trying to sell to. The financial crisis eventually took us out. That whole business model went away. But the Lazy Environmentalist at the same time became a reality TV show on Sundance Channel. I had this like national, this primetime reality TV show that I did for a couple of years with this guy, Dave Metzler, who created the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. So it had this like makeover sensibility where I would make over not necessarily people in their homes, but we'd go find a professional. So the premise was like, or the convention was like, we'd find we did so many goofy things. We'd find like a funeral director. We actually greened like a funeral home and be like, okay, like you're exhuming the bodies, but like look at all these toxic chemicals. And they'd be like, I gotta keep it, whatever. Like you understand the family's coming. We're like, how dare you? You feel terrible. All the formaldehyde in this thing. We'd have this like, we duke it out and they'd be like, okay, I'm going to take you on a journey to see if we can green your funeral home, or they're the exterminator, and be like, John, don't you feel terrible, man? Like all these kids and dogs are playing in the yard and you're spraying all these kids. I gotta kill the bugs, and then we'd be like, okay, well, let's go see, can we kill bugs without, toxic chemicals? That was the TV show. We shoot lasers and stuff.
I feel like 2026, do you feel like we could bring it back?
When I talk about the Lazy Environmentalist, or just bring up just even say that name, people still, it has total resonance, right? People are like, that's so me, like that, right? So like the concept, I think the concept it's just always there, right? It's just a part of.
Yeah, the concept's there. And then there's more, like in terms of actually finding those products and replacing them, right? There is more availability, but it may not be like right where they're looking. It may not be top of mind. It might cost more money, like all those things, all those little barriers that get in the way.
Well, yes, I agree with that. I guess my view has become that, it's sort of been when I look at, let's say, green, choose your adjective, eco-friendly, green, sustainable, whatever, consumerism, let's say, or the desire to shop our values. There's a consistent portion of the population that wants to do that. I just haven't really seen that portion grow, or I guess I should say, I haven't seen it grow because I haven't seen the brands grow. Target did things years ago where they'd say, hey, we're going to launch this collection. It's all organic cotton. And they would do that. And maybe they'll still do the same thing today, but it's not like organic cotton is just on the shelves at Target like regularly. Right? My view, this is skipping ahead, but my view eventually evolved over the last 5 years or so more toward the impact, not business to consumer, but business to business, because I think the scale and the ability to have greater impact is there, and it's different and can be more meaningful. So that's an evolution that just, as part of my career.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. Well, if you're game, I'm going to shift into some kind of life lesson, life philosophy questions. And if they don't catch us up to where you are today, we'll come back to the chronological approach. So you've touched on this a few times in our conversation. You've shared some of these, but can you share a pivotal moment that fundamentally changed your perspective?
Sure. In 2007, that time frame, when I had the radio show on Sirius, I wanted to do a radio show about eco-friendly cars. And eco-friendly transportation. I was trying to figure out how to do that show. The only car that was really available at the time that was like eco-friendly was the Toyota Prius. Like there was nothing else really at the, and so I got someone on from Toyota and we talked about the Prius and that was fine, but that was kind of boring to me. And so I found this guy, Plasma Boy, John Wayland, who he may still be to this day, but he had just set or broken the quarter mile. He was a drag car racer, so I guess probably the quarter mile speed record for, I don't know if it was an Oregon state record or beyond, but he was a drag car racer in Portland. And he drove a car called the White Zombie, which was a 1972 Datsun, like this tiny little car where he had loaded it up, packed up the entire thing with batteries that he had like quote unquote borrowed from a forklift or probably multiple forklifts from the warehouse where he worked. And so he raced an electric car. And this electric car was, the videos you can find was super fast. And so I get him on the show. I'm like, I think this will be cool. And he comes on the show and he's a character and he's like, Josh, man, you should have seen it. The other night I'm at the track and I blew the doors off this Corvette. And I went up to the driver after and I was like, how do you feel about the fact that I just kicked your butt with a car that runs on American-made energy? And then he says to me, he's like, 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds, 800 pounds of torque, American-made energy, right? And so it must have been 2007 because we had the show was live. And so people were started to call into our show, which wasn't a regular occurrence for our little eco-friendly radio show, but people were calling in. And who listens to Sirius satellite radio primarily? It's most there's a lot of truck drivers, right? You're in your 18-wheeler and you're listening. So we get these truck drivers calling in from their 18-wheelers and they're like, man, how'd you do that? Tell me, I want to get that for my pickup truck. And then John's telling them how to do it and this or that and DIY this thing. And the whole time they're talking, I'm not saying anything, but the reason why this had such an impact on me, this experience, was because what I realized was here we are having this conversation. All these people are calling in. I would be willing to bet that none of the people calling in would self-identify as environmentalists. And yet here they are so enamored with the environmental solution that all the environmentalists are touting, right? Electric cars. And what that crystallized for me was this view of when you frame the environmental solution in terms of the benefits that it actually provides people based on the things that they already want, and you show how the environmental solution meets them there and actually gets them what they want, they embrace it. They love it. And so that was kind of core to the Lazy Environmentalist. It's core to all the branding work I've done for companies since. And it's really core to every sustainable venture or climate related venture I work on. It has to have that ability to solve people's pain, solve people's problems, deliver real tangible product benefits in addition to what it does for sustainability and cutting carbon and all the other things that I want to see happen too.
Yeah, very cool. So it has to have that as a core. Does that have to be the core marketing message?
Completely. And so when I look today at companies who are, the mission is about, we exist to cut carbon emissions, or we exist to make the world more sustainable in some way. Every single one of those companies, every single one, without exception, that is scaling up market, that is driving market adoption, maybe except Patagonia, because they are very overt about their environmental mission, but they also make extremely high quality clothing, right? With lifetime guarantees. So, but every one of these companies is leading with the product benefits for their customers, leading with how is this going to, so in a business to business context, how is this going to make you more money? How is this going to save you money? How is this going to improve the experience for your customers? I'll give you an example, just to stay on the Patagonia kind of theme for a second. There's a company called Trove that powers an experience that Patagonia consumers love, which is when you go on Patagonia.com and you're shopping for your favorite fleece. Today, you'll see the new fleece, and then you'll see a little box that says, do you want to buy used, right? Do you want to buy the used fleece? Okay, so there's a company that actually enables that whole experience. They drive the whole back-end experience to enable customers to send their used products back to Patagonia, probably get some sort of credit, right? And then ensure the quality of it using AI. They have a way to kind of do some pattern matching and make sure it's of a certain quality, and then drive the back end so that it actually gets tagged and listed on the site, right? And so it's a great business for Patagonia and for Kenneth Cole and for, probably now 100 other brands, Carhartt, like not all like green brands, because it enables for them to have a very low customer acquisition cost. People are like, they love that, right? Like buying that product. They don't really have to advertise too much, this whole used component. The margins are really good because you don't have to pay a lot to get it. The lifetime value of a customer who buys something used off Patagonia is far higher, even than someone's going to buy something new. All these awesome things. And so the CEO of Trove, who actually comes from Nordstrom Rack, who knew like the missionary sustainability guys who started it, who are also really smart businessmen, but they brought in this guy from Nordstrom Rack. And the first thing he came in, he was like, okay, we're going to treat Trove like Fight Club. Like where the first rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of Trove is you don't talk about climate, right? You go talk about everything I just described to you. And then once it's installed and once everybody's shopping, then everyone's going to talk about climate because now it already works, right? And so I see that over and over again. And so you want to drive circularity, you want to drive more recycled materials, whatever you want to drive, you start with product benefits, outcomes, and then you talk about the planet.
Okay, awesome examples. So sticking on your career, but any point that you want to pick from, what's been one of your greatest challenges and how did you overcome it?
One of my greatest challenges. Well, so I started this company called Planted 5 years ago. And Planted is, so today we have a 150,000 square foot factory in North Carolina. It's a crazy business. It's a crazy concept. We, being me and two former engineers from SpaceX, who I met again about this time 5 years ago, came up with this concept that if we could figure out something that grew much faster than trees, then we could really harness the power of photosynthesis to remove carbon from the atmosphere. And if we could figure out some biomass, maybe it was hemp, maybe it was bamboo. Ultimately, we figured out this really rapidly growing perennial grass, which is actually what we grow. Then we could rapidly remove carbon from the atmosphere. And if it was strong and had really strong fiber, then maybe we could turn it into materials that actually replace wherever timber goes, right? So like you don't have to cut down trees. And if we can build a factory where you don't need a smokestack, then all this carbon that we're working on pulling out of the atmosphere by trying to figure out how to stand up a new climate crop that doesn't exist, then we could actually store that carbon in whatever products we create. And so we ended up creating building materials, and now we work with the largest home builder in the country, D.R. Horton, and have an order for 10 million panels that replace wood panels called oriented strand board in home building, like in 5 years and more. And it's an amazing business. But early on, we were trying to raise money for that business, and which was my job. I was the founding CEO. And we were having a really tough time. I mean, raising money is really tough. We had talked to certainly probably 100 investors. It wasn't working. It's a crazy idea in the first place. Like, how would we pull this off? And I was pitching this woman who had worked for Facebook on their internal venture capital team. So, when Facebook invests in other companies, she left, was starting to become a climate investor, a climate technology investor. So I got introduced to her, pitched her, and she was like, it's an interesting idea, but I'm not going to invest. I was like, well, can I ask why? She said, well, one, I don't really know you. I don't really know your co-founders. It just feels pretty risky. Two, like your materials really aren't that great. Like your pitch deck, your materials really aren't that great. So I said to her, I'm like, well, would you be willing to advise us? Would you be our advisor and help us do this? I mean, you were a VC at Facebook, like you've seen time. And so she agreed. And the first thing she said to me and one of the SpaceX guys who I was raising money with at the time, this guy Wada, she was like, okay, look, she's like, Josh, you and Wada, like you guys are good. Like you guys are enthusiastic. You guys have the vision. You seem to be pretty knowledgeable, but like your pitch deck is so bad that you should never show that to anybody. Like it's just so bad. So what you do is when you're going to get on the phone with an investor, you're going to send the materials for them to review like 10 minutes before the call. So hopefully they don't have the time to look at it. And their first impression of the business is going to be you and Wada. And I say all that to say, the challenge that I overcame, this was in 2021, was trying to figure out how I could do this kind of thing for the first time, which was raise real significant money from investors and then venture capitalists. And so for me, that was about getting as much feedback and advice into the process as I possibly could. And I had already started like an angel investor group and run that, but I'd never really been on the other side where it was incumbent upon me.
Yeah.
And that was a big moment for me because as I'm describing some of my early experience to you, I didn't seek out mentors. I didn't seek out advice in kind of the early years of my career.
Yeah.
And when I got to Planted, I realized that I was going to have to kind of flip my own internal script and get a lot more feedback from a lot of external sources and outside influences to be able to succeed in this role as you're trying to lead this, really bring this new concept and kind of company into the world. So that's really how I overcame that challenge. Was not from, it wasn't even necessarily from getting better at it. It was just really from getting better at asking for help and the right information to help me do my job better.
Yeah, so listen, as you were describing Planted, I was like, that is super cool. And we haven't talked about super cool yet, but it is. Then basically you sought out mentors, you sought out more feedback, you sought out advice, right? How to move it forward. Did you end up fundraising? Did you end up successfully fundraising?
We did. So in 2021, we raised a $2 million seed round, and it was, really, we had a lot of great investors. Very gratifying to see that come together. One of the first investors, if not the first investor, was this guy, Biz Stone, or is this guy, Biz Stone. Biz was a co-founder of Twitter. He's founded so many consequential, or been part of so many consequential ventures in Silicon Valley, Beyond Meat, where he was a key investor and certainly on the board, maybe chairman of the board. I got to Biz because we were posting a lot on LinkedIn, trying to build buzz around the company. And this woman reached out to me who had been a guest on my radio show on Sirius. And she had, back in the day, had an eco-friendly fashion line. And she's like, I think my boss might be interested. And so we meet with Biz. And he's like, I think maybe we'll fund this through our venture capital fund. And then the venture capital fund wasn't interested, but he was. And he was like, look, I'm going to go, I'm going to come in with you guys. I'm going to go along on this with you guys because I see the civilizational scale of the impact that you're trying to have. And so we landed Biz. And then once, with early stage fundraising, at least, that's what I know best. Once you get one and it's a name and it's known, then the snowball starts rolling downhill, and it became easier. So we did that round. And then the next year we did a $10 million Series A venture round too.
Awesome. And you're still involved with the organization in kind of a fractional advisory role today, right?
Well, I actually came back. So I stepped back as CEO in 2024, and I actually came back earlier this year as the fractional, or as the chief marketing officer. And so, we have a lot of growth ahead of us. And what's very exciting is we're entering into new markets, looking at furniture. We're looking at other, for the materials that we're actually, starting to commercialize in home building. We're getting into other types of products made from our grass, from our plant. So we're really expanding for this idea of we're sort of the single product or single industry where we started. We're going to do building materials to extension into other adjacent markets. But also it's going from single product to actually a platform for products made from atmospheric carbon, where the idea ultimately is we scale up this cool factory system and this cool agricultural supply chain and replace a lot of products that consumers or different industries use today. And we just are basically how do you take your carbon? What do you want? We'll make it for you.
Awesome. Very cool. Have there been lessons that you've learned the hard way?
I would actually think about the question, the other way around. Is there anything I've ever learned the easy way? And the answer is never. I think that's because I think of myself as probably just as more as a creative person than I would identify as an entrepreneur. And so that's always about wanting to bring something new into the world that doesn't exist. And so something about that usually is the hard way.
Yeah, interesting. I'll ask you this one next. You can flip it if you want. Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, I mentioned not having mentors as a younger professional. I would have changed that. I definitely would change that.
Yeah.
So anyone who I talk to today,
advice.
I encourage them to seek out advice, seek out guidance. I, for better or worse, probably mostly worse, felt like I was going to figure things out on my own. But that just takes off. I mean, you just realize it just takes longer. Like you're just probably often creating angst and some pain that you just might not need. So that's certainly one. I think there's parts of me that look at certain professionals today who just like did one thing for 25 or 30 years and are like wildly successful financially, like very like stable, have like a certain, have had a certain path that I don't know that I would have ever wanted the path, because I think I would have probably blown my brains out. I would have gotten bored and it would have been awful. But like, they're at a certain place, in life that I wouldn't mind being at as well in other ways, where I just really like the hustle. And so I don't know that I would have like picked one thing and stuck with it, or picked two things and stuck with it and not shifted and tried other things. I think it's just in my nature. Mm-hmm. But I do think about that sometimes. What are the benefits and what are the consequences of the life of the creative entrepreneur that you are always, when you stay true to yourself?
Yeah, it's an important question. Whatever it leads you to, it's an important question. What's something that you're most proud of in life, in career?
My kids. I've got 3 kids, one soon to be 16, one 14, one 10. I'm just incredibly proud of them, who they are as, just really as humans. They're amazing. And it creates a lot of joy.
Awesome. We haven't talked about your family yet. We talked about your early days. We had a brief conversation before we started, and while I'm just meeting you for the first time today, I have already heard about your kids. So I'm glad it's made it into the podcast.
Excellent.
What did fatherhood change for you in life?
It just made me a lot less selfish. Or maybe a lot less, certainly, I mean, of course, I say selfish, self-focused. My life centers around my children in a way that feels really valuable. But I do think this was probably the shift for me, and moving just really ultimately over time, embracing fatherhood, where, I think early on, I felt conflicted about that, what I was missing or what was being taken away. I've just, got into a place at this point as a dad with my children where I just feel like it is so totally the central focus for me is my children and our family life. And I just have a growing appreciation for that.
Yeah. Very cool and honest and real. Yeah. You've had a lot of successes throughout your career, throughout your life. I haven't asked you explicitly about them, but if I asked you, how would you define success? What would you say?
I think success is being able to do work that feels really meaningful, and certainly being compensated well for it. I wouldn't say that it's like doing work that's necessarily really fun, because I don't think those two things always go hand in hand. But I think the work that feels deeply long-term meaningful and being compensated well, being acknowledged for it is what success means to me.
Yeah. Now let's check out Super Cool.
Welcome to Super Cool, the show about low-carbon innovations now scaling.
Power is something so essential to life that we want people to never lose power.
Each week, we talk with the founders, CEOs, and executives, winning customers, growing revenue, and capturing market share by turning carbon-cutting ideas into competitive advantage.
How can we become the long-term solution, long-term transportation option when the cities are planning their 20 years, 50 years city planning master plan?
This is the rise of the low-carbon economy.
It was really just trying to understand, why are we not doing more?
A multi-trillion-dollar transformation already underway.
This has been another episode of the AudioLife Podcast. I've been your host again today, Carrie Purcell, joined by our awesome guest, Josh Dorfman. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave us a rating. It helps other people find us. We will see you back in 2 weeks.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.